Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil sends the beast with wrath, because he knows the time is short. Let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666.
Um, well, welcome to Vozes Underground. Today we're gonna have a fucking special interview with Jerry. Could you tell me the last name? It's Kurunen.
Yes, correct.
Ooh, okay. Rauta. Can I make the joke? Isque.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
obrigado. Thanks for having me here.
No, thank you for give you a little bit of your time here. Today is special not only because it's special, but it's the bridge between Finland and Brazil, and not only that, it's the first time that the channel across the Atlantic, right? So, yeah, it's very special. It's meaningful, and as someone that who was has recently started the channel, like it's 1 year that we are celebrating today. It's the 1 year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So that's it. I think there's nothing more to say besides thank you. And the first question is kind of a pattern of the program, So I always start asking about how you started to liking the music and what else. Let me just read right here. Hold on. It's basically how do you start to, I know that Finland has this culture about music. I think you guys, that's my point of view, of course. I think you guys are very close to music in general, not only metal. Of course, we know the stereotype that Finland is the, you know, country of metal, but how did you started to get interested in music first and how it, progressively became that, like the metal? I mean, how you got interested in all that?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, I love to go back to history, back in time, and all that stuff. Now, obviously, I was a very young kid when I got introduced to music. Of course, it was like these children's songs originally. We had this stereo system with vinyl player, and I remember we had this really colorful, very childish design. By I mean, obviously, because it was meant for kids. I don't know how my mom acquired them. What was the story? I don't even remember the names, but they were like these vinyls which had something like some kind of like storytelling thing, like fables and whatnot. But they were on vinyl, so kind of like podcasts of their time in a way, but vinyl. So because we had this stuff, and it wasn't so big of a jump to start listening to whatever, because the stereo system back in the days looked fancy and all that stuff. I don't know if it was expensive, and my mom and her husband back in the days, they would listen to tapes, Finnish lager music and all that stuff, like continuously, like switching tape and then driving more and again and again and again. That was a lot of things were like happening. I didn't like that stuff as a kid even, but I mean, I kind of understood that there was something in that music. Maybe that was like a more like a revelation later on, like people would actually listen to music instead of just radio stations. But even before this, when we would travel to different places, having this kind of a, what would you call it, like a transportable home, whatever, traveling. I was something like probably 7 years of age, and I had got to know this girl from this neighborhood. She was maybe I don't know, 2 years older maybe than me, and she got introduced, I think, by her older brother, to metal music, and she would bring us tape, which had Iron Maiden. For some reason, I remember what it was. I mean, it could have been that I had no idea what was playing, but that was my introduction to metal music, and I don't remember exact thoughts, but I remember I had no clue what this was supposed to be, but it sounded badass. So I would have then this kind of a magic marker kind of a thing, and that I would, write heavy metal on my pants, on even on the fucking buildings. Well, I don't know why. Of course, then my mother gave me a lecture. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to go with the magic marker and write text on walls or whatever. But somehow it made this big impact. So even though I was a little kid, that music made something happen. But of course, back in the days, metal music. This was, by the way, early '80s, before mid '80s. So metal music wasn't, of course, anything like mainstream back in the days. So what you would usually see on television, for example, would be just normal mainstream music, Finnish lager music, which was, of course, Finnish in language and all. But at some point, and I cannot say which age I was, something like 9, 10, I'm guessing, there was this kind of a heavy metal special. And they would just play, heavy metal and hard rock music videos, Metal Crew, Twisted Sister, Wasp, Kiss, all that stuff. Now, it's not obviously extreme metal or maybe metal not to begin with. But when you have, Kiss guys doing these raw and brutal music videos, like French kissing some super hot ladies, and there was leather and chains and all that stuff. You would see Metal Crew dressing up wildly. You would see Twisted Sister dressing wildly and having these great music videos, which was very rebellious. I want to rock or whatever. So you would kind of understand that these guys are beyond normal music. They were rebellious. They was badass. They would listen to no rules, no bullshit. That was like this anti-establishment from the get-go. And we, as young guys, me and my friends, around that 9, 10 years of age, we would be impacted by that. Like, wow. Like, for example, when I got to hear Kiss and see those music videos, that was, after they got ridden, their makeups. Some videos, of course, with the makeup, but things like Lick It Up. These guys would be walking in a row. Those who know and have seen the video know that these guys look like badass. They were like from Mad Max movies, kind of like, some gangbangers. So they had this badass attitude. The music, well, kind of lame in a way, even though I think Kiss has some cool tracks and all. And of course, when, Wasp came into the big picture with their not chainsaw blades, but the circular, saw blades, and wild clothing, they would show middle fingers, like, oh shit, this is so crazy. These guys can do what the hell they want. They would have motorcycles and, anything a small boy could look up to, like, wow, these guys are rebels. They are outside the normal rules, normal school system and all that stuff. So that was very inspiring. And of course, those bands then made us to, get interested in rock music and metal music in general. And I remember that I think, turning 11, or maybe I was 11. I got the tape for Europe. That this was Final Countdown and the other one. Before that, I don't even remember the name anymore. And then there was more Mötley Crüe and the likes coming into play. And, those were basically getting us ready for heavier music, which was eventually gonna come in our ways. And there was a big jump, like when I got to hear death metal for the first time. I don't know what age I was, but maybe 14, 15. And that band was Ball Thrower. That was true, actually, tabletop gaming, because their second album, Realms of Chaos, featured the same cover as this miniature game, Warhammer 40,000, which was all about brutal warfare. So very fitting for this kind of stuff. And these guys were geeks as us. And, that's, I think, why my friend got that, vinyl in the first place, because it was very much connected to the game and, the music. So we would listen to that, and it was so heavy that we couldn't fucking, stand it. It was like, we were kind of like, this is a little bit exaggeration, but to get to the point, we were probably gonna get we're gonna die if we listen to this music, get a heart attack or something. Like, it was so much heavier. It was a big jump from these, hardcore bands and bands like Wasp to something like Ball Thrower, even if we had heard Iron Maiden and the like before. So when you kind of start dipping your toes into that kind of stuff, and then you kind of start getting to know, thrash metal and the like. And there was this, which we mentioned before we started recording, Suicidal Tendencies, with their kind of hardcore punk turning into metal stuff, which was quite thrashy. Of course, Metallica came into the big picture and all that stuff. And there was, of course, grunge. Grunge was there like on the turn of 80s and 90s. Some of the friends were kind of stepping from hard rock to grunge. I was more like listening to it through my friends, but it felt like a little bit kind of a too basic. I liked some stuff, but my heart was already going into those more brutal and darker places. But it had to be happening slowly for a couple of reasons. First of all, this jump from hard rock to this kind of a brutal metal was just too big. So you had to kind of take the baby steps. You just don't start like, hey, here I'm listening to Europe, and then you start listening to Ball for Roar. It was just too much. So you would get introduced to something else, but I do not remember all the bands anymore because that was like 35 plus years ago. So, bands would come into play and all that stuff, and grunge was on the side, but at the same time, we would listen to bands like, Faith No More, Pantera came into being. And so suddenly, from those rock bands, you move to hard rock bands and heavy metal bands, and then to thrash metal, groove metal, all that stuff. And then kind of by surprise, death metal comes into game, and sooner or later you are finding black metal as well. And that's at some point I felt like I don't want to even listen to these softer bands, because once you go black, you never go back kind of a thing is happening. Of course, later on when you get more experience and understanding, and you don't just have to listen to death and black metal all the time. So you can actually listen to softer bands while you're listening to the extreme metal bands. But at some point, that was kind of a path to go. When you start here, you end up going right there. And, that happened relatively quickly. Like if the first formative years was spent with this hard rock, even, bands like Bon Jovi and all that stuff. So kind of light stuff in a way. And then suddenly, boom, you're right there with the black metal and death metal. And you don't know even how fast it happened, because once you get introduced to other guys who are listening to that kind of stuff, suddenly, your world is full of these bands.
And here I am. Well, I would like to ask you if you could explain to us a little bit how it was in Finland in general, the environment, like how do you started to go into shows and stuff like that? Because the next question is about the birth of Rauta, but I think there is a gap between your childhood and the birth of Rauta. I think teen era and blah 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 stuff like this. You needed to be grounded on the scene in Finland to get to the point that you missed something and start to talk about metal, right? Am I wrong?
Definitely. And it's pretty straightforward story in a way. Now, I don't know. I honestly don't remember if there were any shows worth mentioning before 1993. I was 17 years of age, and Metallica came to Helsinki. And, at that point, Metallica was the most important musical things in my life. It was like larger than life. It wasn't just a band. It was so big, so great. I was basically listening to the first five first Metallica albums back in the days. I was listening to those tapes so much. And so when they came to Finland 1993, this was June, I think. I had to get there. So I was there with my friends. We would travel there, by train and get to see that show. So it was, of course, wow. You cannot really say like, oh, it was just a gig. First of all, it was probably the first real gig I've ever seen. I don't know if my parents took me some other place, which I don't even remember, but the first kind of a real gig where I would go on my own with my friends. And of course, Metallica being this greatest band on earth at that time, they played a great show. I had to buy a, shirt. and it was so great. So I think that was really when the gates to live world open in a way, and suddenly I would find myself going to more gigs. But also in late, I mean, in August 1993, I moved to another city. So I left home with my mom and my mom's husband. So I was suddenly in this small city called Loima, about 7,000 people back in the days, I think. So quite small of a town, really. But that town had, things like Demigod, one of the classic death metal bands from Finland. So what I would quickly learn through this school I was attending to, that there were actually quite a lot of metalheads, considering that the town was quite small.
Uh-huh.
So I got to know other people, and this was indeed August 1993. So suddenly I would make new friends while I was going to the local record store. And mind you, they had a pretty good selection of all kinds of metal, despite being this small town. It was really kind of a super cool coincidence. So I would get to know these other guys. If I saw some metal T-shirt, I would probably get to introduce to those guys. We would drink in the park, talk to other guys with long hair and all that stuff. That was like, like if you saw someone with the long hair, like, hey, that's probably my kind of guy. So we would probably end up drinking together. So fast forward to all this, suddenly we would go together to shows and all that stuff. Maybe even my home city, Turku, because it was only like 45 minutes with a train.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
what
there was,
I was going to ask that. Where is? I mean, I don't know the city, but I was asking. I was about to ask which city was near.
well, I still live in Turku, which is nowadays a little bit bigger than back in the days, but I think it was something like 150,000. So not that big, but in Finnish scale, quite big, number four
Mhm.
or three, whatever, back in the days. So anyway, in Turku there was metal events happening. So I would go eventually, the death metal shows and all. And from this Loima, this smaller city, this town, we could sometimes pack a couple of cars and drive to Helsinki to see shows. Like this was probably 1994, might have been 1995, when, for example, we would go to see Meshuggah, Machine Head coming to Finland for the first time, and all that stuff. And we would really like just go to shows. Might take a couple of hours of driving, but we had this good, you know, guys. You would kind of be this scene. And 1994, somewhere probably September, October, whatever, but the fall side of 1994, I joined my very first band too, and we played death metal, and that's where things really started happening. So as a guy who had been in this small town for about a year, suddenly I had all these doors and windows opening. I would find more new music through my new friends, death metal and then black metal, and of course lots of older stuff as well, thrash metal, heavy metal, whatever. And then having this band, going to the shows and all that stuff, that would really put things in motion. And around 1996, I started to get to know more people from Finnish black metal scene. Um, you know that was pretty much online, but not only, because, for example, then I moved to another city, also in fall 1996. Went to another school, and then I learned that in my school there were other guys who were also metalheads, and one of them happened to live in the same apartment building, just like three floors down to me, and he would be this metalhead who would know a lot of black metal, bands and all that stuff. Also, other marginal music like death industrial and all that stuff. Cold meat industry, whatever. So he would introduce me to a lot of other bands, and later on he would actually join me for black metal band Nightside in 1996. So things were actually happening quite quickly. I'm just gonna move this curtain a little bit because now the sun is not shining so much. So, what I'm saying here is things happen very, very quickly. And, when you're going on about with your friends to these shows and exploring bands and scenes and all that stuff, things went quite fast, moving to a next level. You would be buying more CDs, you would be copying tapes and blah, blah, blah. And fast forward, how it led to Rauta was, of course, when I was like, this was around 2001 or so, I started writing about music, because at some point I felt it's not enough if I just, listen to music, and if I play in bands, play shows, and blah blah blah. I also want to write about music. And that was because, first of all, there wasn't really that good underground extreme metal journalism in Finland. There was this one legendary guy, but he wrote shit. His reviews were horrible. I mean, really, like, really bad. Like, he could have just one line: "This logo is unreadable, probably some shit." That was it. That was the review, really. Like, he wouldn't even mention sometimes the musical genre. He wouldn't mention, like, he could write something like, "This band is from Mexico and they look like stupid guys. This music is probably shit as well." What is that? I wanted to change that. I wanted to show that you could actually write cool reviews about music, like, like what is the style, and describe it and be critical about it. And my inspiration didn't come from musical journalism, but video game journalism, because I had already been reading a lot of video game reviews since the 80s. And there were some very cool guys who knew what they were doing. They were writing great stuff about video games. And also there were movie reviews. So I figured out, if there can be reviews about, video games and movies and whatever, why couldn't there be someone writing about black metal? And if there is nobody else to do it, hey, I might just step in. And then I got introduced to other guys who knew already their stuff with heavy metal, power metal, all that stuff. And I applied to this new site that was going to be, start in August 2002. And I sent some samples what I had been already writing. And they were like, "Yeah, welcome on board." And from the get-go, from 2002 August, I started writing. And I would write so much, different kind of reviews. Then the review CDs would be pouring in. I would do interviews and all that stuff. So I was like crazy. I was like maniac about writing. Like, always listening to new music, always writing about new music, going to the shows. I would do gig reports. I was just like fucking living that metal music, which I'm still doing. But at some point, it kind of started by accident through my day job, which is not related to music at all, but more like video gaming and technology and all that stuff. I got to know this video channel producer in Finland, and we were talking about like passion, him for doing videos and me for music. That while we did knew one another through my day job, like, what if we would do video content for his media, like about music? I would be the host. He would handle cameras, filming, editing, and all that stuff. I'm like, let's do it. So 2016 that started. That was 1 year before Rauta, and we did a few shows with these people. We went like local black metal event Turku Saatanalle 2016. Did a couple of interviews, but this was in Finnish, of course, with the Finnish bands, and English for English bands, or foreign bands. And then there was like Nile Meleches gig in Easter 2016. We would do that, and everything was like, okay, this is working. But then at some point, this guy who was co-founder of Rauta as well, we figured out maybe we should start this as a separate project, put it right on YouTube instead of this other media. That's where Rauta was born. So basically, my writing stuff for past 15 years, doing reviews, doing interviews, and gig reports and all that stuff would lead to Rauta. So basically, from writing to doing videos. And 2017, we started this at Steelfest, and that's where the first interviews were done. But like I said, this pilot project preceding Rauta was already 2016. So Rauta didn't have to start from scratch. We had basically doing this pilot run with this previous project. So we already knew how it would be in terms of doing the interviews and, editing process and putting on YouTube. And he had more experience on YouTube side. So he kind of had the the tech understanding for that. All I had to do was, get the bands for interview and convince to do the interview and then do the interview. So my job was relatively easy. And that's how Rauta started. So already this previous background doing metal journalism for 15 years pretty much paved me the way. And of course, by that time, I had so many contacts. So when I started moving from writing to doing more videos, I didn't have to get to introduce myself like who I am, what I'm all about, but more like just introduce this new media, Rauta. And
Hmm.
like, okay, feel welcome to the festival. Here is the press pass, blah blah blah. And that's when we started doing, and that's how things started. And for the record, this guy who started co-founded Rauta with me decided to depart after a couple of years, and that's how it became just basically what I own. But of course, with interviews, I have cameraman. But it wasn't just founded just by myself. We were basically
Hmm.
two guys, and then there was this camera slash editing woman who is, by the way, still on board. So regards to Minter for 9 years and plus.
Well, that's what I like the most about you guys. It's not about I don't know. I think the mindset comes that thing we are talking about the cultural thing, because if you think, here I am thinking anyways, being ahead of time, it's not about being ahead of time on the clock, but thinking ahead. Because if you think like about technology, I remember that back in the days Nokia was really popular in Brazil,
Yeah, same here, of course. Yeah.
and it's from Finland, and nobody knew about where this fucking Nokia comes from. It was really popular. It was back in the 2000 something. Everyone had Nokia 11 11. No, you had the models, and
Yeah.
it was really popular. But not only talking about metal, but how the mind works to get here. Because when you think about metal, we know that black metal, for example, extreme music, the industry of the musicians, let's put it like this, comes from Norway, maybe. And I mean, I have my personal taste that it's the Finnish black metal, as you know, but it's not that common to people consume. You know what I'm saying? And being a Finnish guy that build with your friend, of course, a channel that speaks about, you understand how important it is.
Yeah. I hope.
I mean, I could say that you're well known global wise, maybe.
Hopefully.
Because
Hopefully.
I mean, we are from South America and I'm interviewing you. How do you doubt about that? You know? And speaking about the Finnish personality and humor,
Yeah.
um, we have this stereotype that the Finnish people are quiet and serious,
Yeah. I know the
reserved.
stereotype you're referring to. Yeah.
But I could notice, and I think everyone else can notice that they use the a little bit of humor. Are you a funny guy? I am. I don't know.
I don't know. Of course, I'm biased to talk about humor. Am I a funny guy? Do I make people laugh and all that stuff? Well, reality is that we Finns, we tend to be very, how to say, overly down to earth. One of the problems in Finland, this might apply to Nokia as well and other companies who have been doing good job, by the way, through technology or otherwise. One of the reasons why we lose to Sweden, for example, so often is we are too modest. That's one of the things in Finland, which is kind of a comes with our DNA, so to speak. That comes with the culture. Like if someone says like, "Hey, you're really good at it. What do you do?" and we're like, "No, don't say
Yeah,
that."
it's forbidden to brag about yourself. I could
Yeah,
notice.
we're
Yeah.
like allergic to having this American bragging, like "fuck yeah, I'm American number one." We don't do that. Like I've been joking this. Like if you see sports, doesn't matter whether it's Formula One or whether it's ice hockey or whatever, but something that where Finnish people can be quite good. Now, if you see an American uh, athlete, someone in the sports, and they are being asked like, "How was the race? How was the game?" and they go like, "Yeah, our team is the best. Our coach is the best." I'm the fucking best. They can be all about it. Like, oh yeah, we fucking trained so hard. We beat them because we're so good. Finnish are like, yeah, I think the race was gone, but you won. Yeah, I think the race was pretty okay. What I'm saying here, we're kind of unable to say that we are good. Sweden are way more better promoting themselves, and way they do good. They can be proud about it. They don't maybe brag about it, but they're like, okay, yeah, thanks for letting us know. We're good, yeah. Finns are like, I don't know, man. It feels awkward when you say nice things about us. So we have this problem, and to a degree, you kind of have to learn to step away from that kind of a culture and mindset. But then again, I don't really feel that's necessary. I like when I meet artists, for example, who are very grounded, that when they are down to earth, and I'm talking about bands like Satyricon level. Like when I was talking to Frost, everybody knows Frost in the black metal world and knows how crazy good drummer he is and all that stuff. And I think he's a prime example of this anti-rock star attitude. He's a great guy because he doesn't make fuss about him. In a way, he's very, very Finnish in that sense. He could be the silent guy in the room. He doesn't make an issue out of himself, like, hey, don't you know who the fuck I am? He's just his silent, nice guy in the room. He doesn't, talk about like, hey, don't you know what I do? You probably should know me. You probably should take a photo of me, kind of stuff. And there are those people who act like that. Mm-hmm. But in a way, the Finnish attitude is, very different. And we tend to be a little bit introvert in the sense like if there is someone talking to us, we might like, why is this person talking to us? We don't even know. Like it's normal even for me, and I'm very extrovert. I'm very social person, very talkative person. Even for me, it's normal if I say there's a lady coming out of a grocery store with a baby car.
Stop right here. You extrovert? I had to scream your name at the street. Come on. Jerry!
Yeah,
he's
so
not
I'm
hearing.
saying like if I open.
No. People need to know that. Hey, Jerry.
Well, that happens. That's what I'm trying to say.
Jerry!
If I open like the door to a lady with a baby on a cart, she might say thank you, and then I'm like, I don't maybe say like you're welcome. We tend to have this habit. You might help the elderly lady, open the door for her or taking whatever, and you're just like, you don't maybe even say like you're welcome or thank you. Well, thank you probably comes out of the mouth, but then we kind of get shut, like we're like muted, like we just nod or like shrug or whatever. And that's very typical Finnish behavior, and I don't know how to explain it, because it happens to people like me as well. I think it's just in the culture, like when we meet other Finns, we're just like, and you don't necessarily need to go beyond that. We don't need to use words. So when we are supposed to be talkative and kind of outgoing, I think it needs a little bit extra by attitude, by alcohol, or something like that. So for me, it's easy to do these interviews because I'm not shy person. I'm very confident. I might be even arrogant, some people. But you kind of have to be that. And actually, there was a nice reminder of that when I met Osmos Records founder, Erve, this year at Steelfest. And last year as well. This year we actually spoke to one another, had a long conversation. But when I was emailing him last year about a record deal thing, he reminded that I was the guy who basically told him to fuck off when we were talking about ad hominem. And my way of saying fuck off doesn't mean like I'm rude. It's more like, okay, please go now. We need to start. So when we were doing ad hominem interview, I don't know. I didn't even know he was Erve of Osmos, and even if I did, it didn't matter. What I'm saying here is when we gonna do interviews and all that stuff, I'm like, piss off. We need to work now. So it doesn't matter if you're fucking president of the United States, but when we have to do We're just like, okay, fuck off, go now, please. Let us do our job. We can
Yeah.
talk later and do high fives and all that shit. So there has to be a level of arrogance in the mix, because what does confidence do if you're silent type? You also have to kind of step up and say, shut the fuck, leave the room, and that's part of the culture, the heritage when it comes to all those old school days, when people were talking about true people and posers and all that stuff. What does it matter if you think like you're like kind of whispering, that guy is a poser. You're supposed to, hey, that guy is a poser. Throw him out of the fucking room, You have to be confident and loud about it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any difference. So, yeah, that's a weird combination when you combine the Finnish silence and down to earth stuff, and then you also have to step up with the arrogance and all. So it's a weird combo for sure.
Yeah, it is, and you're rude. Don't forget about that. Anyways, do you think? Sorry about that. Do you
I don't
think
think.
that? Just messing with you, of course. Do you think that it's the reason why you became a trusted voice or something?
Sorry, again, what?
Trusted voice, because you have, people stop to watch your videos, and it's not that easy to build that kind of trust with audience or something.
Oh, yeah,
That
I know what you mean.
I'm saying, like, YouTube channel you have lots, hundred of, but being the guy that people are waiting for the review. Do you think that this Finnish culture structure inside, because you broke the circle about speaking about metal in YouTube? I think so. Might have other people that do the same way in Finland or whatever, but to be the channel that people go watch, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's a hard for me to answer, because at the same time I realize there are global viewers for Rauta, and I'm really thankful for that. Of course, I'm thankful to each and every individual who spent some time with the channel, and I don't take it as given. What I'm saying here, I don't expect anybody to watch my content. I'm happy when people do that, of course, but I don't see it like automatically happening. I don't expect people to agree with me, for instance. When I'm making my sometimes spicy takes, my opinions, I don't expect people are gonna agree with me. And of course, I think that's very important for people to understand. It's not about agreement. It's about conversation. It's about a dialogue. It's about having these different opinions and talking about them. So back and forth. If I'm seen as a trusted voice, like you say, I think it's because I have the courage to voice my opinion. I'm not apologetic. I'm not gonna apologize if I hurt somebody's feeling because I made certain review. And if I ask some nasty questions from a band, made them feel, I don't know, awkward, uh, or sorry, or angry, or whatever. I mean, that's part of the deal. We're metalheads. We are kind of used to, we are prepared to be confronted. Otherwise, we are the posers and we need to leave the room. So, in my opinion, people who are now hurt that I criticized, for example, their music, with bad, nasty words, I mean, get the fuck out of here. Grow some balls. Get those cojones. Like I think Spanish people would say, like grow that back spine, because if you're not ready to get criticism for your music, then you're too weak to make the music. And then finally, when you are ready to face the criticism for your art, then you are ready, at least to a certain degree. And I got to learn that also the hard way. I remember when I was reading some of the Nightside debut album reviews early 2000s. And I remember this one review that was something like 6 out of 10, might have been 5 out of 10, doesn't matter. and it was criticizing, like, we had this one song, Demon Metal, which is thrashy, our kind of a tribute to old school thrash metal bands, because our generation grew up with thrash metal. And this critic was like mentioning, okay, this is one of those albums, again, these guys want to play some thrash metal. And the overall review was quite um, neutral, maybe slightly negative, but kind of a 6 out of 5 out of 10 kind of stuff. So not overly negative, but not really praising or liking the album, which is of course fine. But I remember when I was reading that review, I was like, what the fuck? What this guy knows? What the fuck? Then I took a little bit of distance, a little bit time passed, and I realized, okay, it's actually fine. Doesn't matter if this guy likes or doesn't like the album, because it's his opinion, and it's fine. Like, I don't have the right to be angry at this guy. I mean, I do have the right, but kind of like, it would be stupid. If he doesn't like the album, no matter of anger or love or whatever would change that thing. If he doesn't like what he hears, hey, what can I do? We did what we could with the album. If he doesn't like it, it's fine. If he had crushed it 1 out of 10, so what? Some people will hate it, some people will like it, some people will never hear it, despite if it's up their liking or not. So what I'm saying, it was kind of a essential learning point for me, that sometimes things are not, to be liked, and you cannot do anything about it. And that's when it comes to this kill your darlings kind of a phase. Like, when you do your music or other art for that matter, when you put it out there in the public, you have lost the grasp of that stuff. Then you can't do jack shit about it. People will pirate it. People will share the files. People will criticize it. People will like it. People will have opinions about it. People will joke about it. And you just have to deal with it. And the same thing applies to being an influencer. Like, if you run a YouTube, if you run a podcast, if you do anything at all, there will be always those naysayers who say, you suck, you have eat my balls, choke on a black fat dick. And you're like, okay, fine. You just have to kind of thicken your skin and take the blows, or otherwise you just should quit and do something else. So what I'm saying here is, I expect same kind of attitude from other metalheads. You have to be strong because you operate in a scene that is built about rebellion. It's about confronting the normal world, the establishment. If you cannot handle it, go make pop music, go write nice poems for little girls or something. But if you want to be a true metalhead, you have to take the blows. It's almost like going to a fucking boxing ring or whatever. You have to take the punches and the blows in order to deal with them. And I think that's part of the reason why Rauta gets some recognition or respect, that I make this with attitude and passion. And I'm not going to be mean here. My point is not to be harsh, rude, nasty, evil, a cunt, in essence. I try to be polite and I try to be nice, but I also cannot sugarcoat things. So if an album is shitty one, I need to voice my opinion about it. I mean, I would lose instantaneously all my credibility if I started calling each and every album, it's really good, man. It's 10 out of 10. You need to buy this. Most albums are not that good. Let's be honest about it. So if I'm just, sharing praises left and right, if I'm telling that each and every album is good, each and every band is great, I would be lying. I would be this dishonest motherfucker. And nobody would, like this guy who is just trying to sugarcoat everything and brown nose and, just say nice things because people like nice things. That's a really shitty attitude to have, because world doesn't go like that. So we have to have the balls to say, sorry, but your album sucks. Get better with songwriting or writing lyrics or whatever. So in order to, have this kind of a respect or recognition, you have to have the balls to say it. And I know I have haters, and it's fine. I am not going to try to please anybody here. If someone likes what I do, great. If someone doesn't care what I do, it's okay. If someone hates me, well, cry me a fucking river. I have still whiskey.
Please give me the authentic perkele. Please, please, please.
Perkele.
Perkele, yeah.
It's like Impel Nazarene. Suomi, Finland, perkele.
Do you want Total War?
Do you
That's
know, by the way, it's a cover?
I know it's Bud Royce one.
Yeah. Good.
I like him.
Yeah.
I'll use it to like. I mean, I do and I don't.
Yeah.
Complicated relationship. Anyways.
Yeah. Complicated, as always.
Okay, so here's some question about the Finnish scene, but from the perspective from someone that lives there, because here I cannot speak from South American people, sadly, but here in Brazil, at least here, actually it's complicated for me to say it because I really like it, but what I can see is, I mean, bands well consolidated in black metal, for example, or even Nightwish or something. Nightwish in South America, they can fill large spaces.
Yep.
So we really enjoy the Finnish industry of music, I could say. But for someone that lives in the actual Finland, what do you have to say about the scene?
Well, the scene is quite divided, obviously. Scene is kind of divided into smaller portions. Like, even to a degree that death metal and black metal scene are also kind of separated. Even if, from my point of view, should be kind of the same. Because I grew up with both and I still enjoy both them kind of equally. But the more we go outside the extreme metal scene, the more mainstream, like things like Nightwish, Amorphis these days, of course, they are kind of a different breed of metalheads in a way. In Finland, there is this kind of a nasty way of calling those radio rock listeners, because we have this radio station in Finland called Radio Rock, and quite literally, they are more about rock. They have this slogan, we play whatever we want. That in essence means they play Metallica, Iron Maiden, some maybe Beast in Black, maybe some song by Nightwish, but also, of course, mainstream softer metal. And by that is the kind of a people who are more like what we in metal scene would call tourists, not necessarily posers. The kind of a wannabe person who wants to dress something like, I'm gonna dress black, I'm gonna put my cargo pants, I'm gonna do horn sign for photo at the mainstream fest, and then they go back home and probably remove the band shirts. They don't look like metalheads in their everyday life. Now, this is of course a little bit assuming I know what they are doing. What I'm saying here is they are more like random, casual listeners of metal. And of course, they are important to these big-ass mainstream metal festivals and events because they bring the money, they bring the mass, the critical mass. But they are not, those who live and breathe metal music or music in general, 24/7, like we kind of a hardcore fans. And by hardcore fans, I don't mean that you have to have a band, you have to write about music, make videos about music, or you have to take photos of music. You can be just a hardcore fan, that is go to shows, buy some merchandise, really deep dive into music, like know your bands, talk about with your friends, hang out with like-minded people. That's what I consider like real metalheads. But of course, if you want to go deeper, then you can start doing these other activities. But these radio rock kind of metalheads, they are a different breed. And I don't want to be mean to them because, like I said, everybody has to start from some point. So when we were kids, we were probably like those guys. We didn't really own records. We didn't go to shows because we were minors. But quite soon, it meant for us anyway, we have to go deeper. Now, I do have some friends who were listening to metal back in the days who don't really listen to that stuff anymore. So maybe for them it was as a phase, like a certain phase of life. Like suddenly some people are metalheads for 2 years in their life, and then they start doing something else. And to us, it might sound foolish or stupid, like a poser or whatever. But I mean, I get it. Music is not for everybody. At least this level of doing video interviews or whatever and going to the shows, blah blah blah. But it's still what I'm trying to say here from Finnish point of view is like this is very divided. So these everyday casual listeners are just different people. You don't end up bumping into them. So while Finland is filled with lots of metal bands, most of these casual metal listeners don't know about things like what is Metal Archives or know about 99% of metal bands in Finland. They probably know a handful. They probably know the bigger bands like Amorphis, Nightwish, and few others, and that's it. They don't know about Finnish black metal, most likely at all. They probably couldn't read a lot of these black metal logos. They wouldn't recognize, hey, what is that? And not just because it's like hard to read, but because they're like, what is that? This is not what we do. So they're kind of like between the regular Joe who doesn't like metal at all and between this hardcore style. So in a way, they are kind of a connecting link. But yeah, of course, if you go to metal festivals in Finland, you see both of these people. And they, of course, end up interacting on some surface level, because they might go to drink together to see certain bands together. Like I've been seeing Nightwish, for example, a few times. And there I am not probably separated from the rest of the guys, these casual listeners. But probably these casual listeners don't end up going to the same shows where I am going because they are not really the same people. So I think there's a certain level of overlapping. Some people like these black metal people, for instance, and these more mainstream metal people, they might have certain overlap here. But in the end, they are different groups of people. I don't know if this answers your question properly, but I don't know really how to expand on it.
No, it does. I mean, and it's interesting for me to hear about that because different countries, same problem, I would say. I mean, and I could experience a little bit of both worlds when I was there because I mean, I didn't even know what I did in one. It was a whole month I stayed there, but I was like enjoying the trip because I wanted to see a little bit of a. So I stayed in Turku for a while, and then I went to Vanta. But I mean, I stayed at Vanta, but I went to Tampere, Lahti. What else? I was just
What many cities?
you know. And I wanted to do more because I heard that the Spiritus Mortis was playing in the north, and I was like, oh my God. But
Yeah.
I have no time. So I couldn't really enjoy all the things I wanted. But I had the chance to, for example, shows, gigs. I went to the Turco Satanale and accept 40 years anniversary of the something the wall balls in the. That's a weird name, but yeah. And I could notice the different types of crowds. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Accept show was more the older people that enjoyed that rock and roll, heavy metal stuff. But in Turco Satanale, I could see the real black metal people from Finland. I could say, because
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it's an underground event, so
what?
it is underground event in the end. So random casual metal listeners don't end up to Turku Saatanalla. Even the name already puts them away.
I'm sorry. I don't think I got what you said.
I mean, like random casual listeners don't go to events like Turku Saatanalle, and,
Yeah.
and just the name itself kind of is probably scaring people because it means Turku for Satan. It's not like those events which are like basic metal fest. you know so it's not
Yeah.
attracting those casual metal listeners.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that I could experience that, and of
Yeah.
course, I wish I could, do more. I know there are some other type of events that it's like in summer cottage or something, but anyways, it's just interesting that how it's different cultures, but the same thing because we do have the same here. Like
Yeah.
people that go to black metal festivals here, you don't even hear about some of the shows because it's so closed to that crowd that people don't know about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Exactly.
interesting. But speaking about the this connection between scenes, do you believe that underground music is truly? Uh, do you believe that truly speaks a universal language or something? Do you think that doesn't matter where you go, it's always gonna be the same language underground one, like people that goes there, the people that the underground attracts, something like this? Do you believe about that?
Well, yeah. It's my experience when I've been doing around 250 interviews already on Rauta, plus all my other experiences in the metal scene. What I've learned is that it doesn't matter if people come from Colombia or Finland or Norway or Greece or whatever, or Singapore for that matter. People are in a way kind of like-minded. There is something universal, something that kind of connects through the music, through the attitude, and all that stuff. So what I've been saying to is, even some of in my interviews, is like this is a very tribal pattern. It's a behavior that is kind of a shared, even to kind of a subconscious levels, that you know we think the same way despite our different languages, our different age, different experience. Like, I've seen people coming from Singapore, Thailand, whatever, and then of course Latin America, or whatever, different parts of Europe, and they have similar ideas how they end up doing that music in their respective bands. Scenes might have certain differences, but much like I described my getaway drug into more extreme metal, it tends to be the same. Like, I was so surprised when I interviewed a few Norwegian black metal bands, how many of those actually start or ended up into extreme metal via bands like Kiss. And when you really think about it, there is no direct connection from Kiss to black metal. I mean, you could make a joke, yeah, but they both have black and white corpse paint. Well, Kiss is not corpse paint, but you know what I mean. But then you kind of understand it's very similar than our background. So it starts from certain ideas like we wanted this anti-establishment. We want some lyrics which are more serious than stupid love songs. And a lot of these bands tend to come from, if not poor conditions, not exactly rich families either. So there are certain connecting dots, shared experiences from country to country, which puts us together. And of course, musical is one of the oldest ways for humankind to express themselves, their feelings, whether it's aggression for, I don't know, war or conflict with another tribe or country or whatever, or whether it's about passion, singing from your heart, be it love stories or be it some kind of a farewell song to dead people. That's one of the oldest ways for us to express. Of course, painting is one thing, and that's another thing which is also shared in many many cultures. Like, if we go read history about ancient cultures, what kind of paintings they would make. The early paintings are like about hunting and whatever. So people tend to have this tendency to share their thoughts through art. And if we jump from that to more modern things like metal music, it's not really that hard to understand, because all metal music kind of come in a way to certain root. Doesn't matter if we're talking about some Asian bands or Latin American bands or whatever. we all come kind of down to the very fact that at some point rock changed to metal music, and mostly we thank that to Black Sabbath. So whenever bands start hearing this heavy music and they're like, hey, I want to do something like that. I want to do something similar, maybe more evil, maybe more extreme, but in a way, you always get that inspiration from someone who did it before you. And of course, they were inspired someone else who were there before you or them. So what I'm saying here, in a way, music at this era, past 60 years or so, anyway, in metal, it's kind of getting these connections. So even though we might think that someone from Japan or China or India might sound different, just because, Asian music is so different from Western music. But when we're talking about rock and roll and metal, we kind of have the same pattern. We're like, hey, those guys did some great tunes. I want to do something similar. And that's why also, things like leather jackets or sign of the horns or whatever are universal things. That's why I think we speak the same language, even if the actual language can be quite different. So even if you go to another country with your metal band shirts, you might not even, know these people. But if you're like, hey, check out this one. I don't even have a metal shirt at the moment, but you know what I'm talking about here. So you might be like, hey, you have a metal shirt. I have a metal shirt. I like what you're playing. And the next guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I can hear the music. And then you're like, okay, let's grab the beers, listen to the music, and just headbang. And then you're like on the same level of connection. So yeah, that is shared culture, tribal happening, in my opinion.
That's awesome. Well, that's the sad part where we can say goodbye to our listeners or watchers. Jerry, I would like to thank you very much for your time here with Vozes Underground. It's I have no words. I'm speechless right now. And do you have anything that you would like to say to us Brazilian people that's gonna watch this video and listen to us soon?
Well, obrigado for the whole audience. I, of course, like that Brazilian people are genuine about their passion. And I know, even though I've never been to Brazil, that a lot of Brazilian people are among the most passionate when it comes to music. And that is something that I kind of hope, especially as a Finn, where we are totally different. I hope that this kind of a Brazilian passion could be, spreading to other countries as well, being dedicated to music and not afraid of showing that to the bands who play or to the next guy at the show and all that stuff. And of course, I hope that a lot of Brazilian people would have the possibility to travel to other countries to see the shows as well, not just because it would be better, but it would be different. And of course, we are always kind of bound to the very fact that certain countries get certain bands, and then you're kind of out of luck of having this and that favorite band coming to your home country. So what can I say is live the dream, live metal, embrace it, share the passion, don't be shy about it. We Finns can be a little bit of that. So be proud of what you do and live it to the max. And more than anything, be honest to yourself and to ones near you. Maybe everybody. Honesty is a good policy.
Okay, Kitos.
Kiitos.
Well, conclude.
I was